Well, hey everybody, Dylan here. So I've made a big kerfuffle out of things. I think that's a word. I'm making it a word now, if not. Long story short, I've been trying to figure out how to incorporate the first episode of Monday Night Raw into things for a while now. But considering I keep on not watching this week's episode, I was like, when do I have time to do it? So this is what I'm thinking. I don't know how true I'll be to this, but this is my thought process, right? So I'm thinking Mondays are episode of OG Raws. So in this case, episode 1, then next week, episode 2, and so on and such. And then from there on out, maybe if I have time on the same Mondays, I'll do the previous week's Raw or past recordings of mine, whatever I do. And then Tuesday, you'll have your normal Raws. And same for SmackDown. I think that's what I'm going to try to do. But I digress. Let's focus on today. Welcome to the first episode of WW at the time F Monday Night Raw. Disclaimer off the bat, this is the Peacock edit, so I don't think I am, but if I'm missing bits, I know later on they're going to be missing some bits, for example in 2006, the John Cena Vince McMahon segment. I don't know why I picked literally the most racist segment I could think of to pick, but I know shit like that I'm going to be missing. But I digress. If I'm missing bits, lines of dialogue, etc., yeah, that's why. So I haven't done a retro episode yet. But even for future reference, I think I want to give a little bit of historical context, maybe, or at least at the bare minimum a background, so that way you can kind of be oh, that's why they did this. Or maybe you're just Dylan, you're rambling. Get into the freaking video, you nerd. Here's some background. So I'm just quoting an article. It's from Wiki Fandom. I'm just quoting it verbatim. Ready? Raw, then known as WWF's Monday Night Raw, aired for an hour on the USA Network. And boy, I miss it when Raw was just an hour. Oh my gosh. I would even settle for 2 hours at this point, but not freaking 3 hours. Come on. Who has 3 hours of their day? Well, as we go through time, just a mansplain off the bat, they'll be on other stations and have longer durations. Hopefully at that point I'll tell you hey, they're on this channel for this reason. Hey, they're on that channel for that reason. Why are they on the USA Network? I don't know. I presume it's because they had a working relationship with MSNBC, and I don't know, did MS... Hold on, I'm going to fact check. Who owns USA Network? I think MSNBC owns that. Yeah, NBC Universal. That's what I'm trying to say. They had a working relationship with NBC, so they probably just said, hey, here's a new channel we have. You can have a slot on that channel. Raw was a replacement at the time for Primetime Wrestling, which was a 2-hour show that lasted 8 years prior on Mondays, I think in the same time slot. I didn't fact check that. So technically speaking, I should start at Primetime Wrestling. But if we're going to keep on doing this, I feel there's something to always replace something until we get to the beginning of things being recorded on TV. So I don't want to put you through that. Honestly, I don't want to watch the Hulkamania era. I barely want to watch the new generation, not because it's bad, but because booking choices almost makes 2020 Raws watchable for me. As I think a lot of people do know, the reason why it was named Raw is due to it being asterisk on this, but it being the first live televised episodic series of wrestling. The asterisk is because there were things that were taped live before this. It's not literally the first thing in history, but it's the first mainstream thing. Plus, some episodes were batch recorded, so they do airings where this episode is live. For example, episode 1 is live, but also on the same night they would batch record episodes, I don't know, I'm just shooting out a number, episodes 2 through 10, and they would air them throughout the week. As I'll get into eventually, that was a terrible idea to do due to the fact that they would have to kayfabe it throughout the week on episodes that weren't recorded already, so certain fans would be why are they acting like this? I don't know if it actually happens, but let's say I'm a wrestler on the show, and we're on episode 3 of Raw, so, like, it's the batched episodes, and I got my eye hurt. But then I show up on WWF Superstars that it is taped, but airs tomorrow, and I'm perfectly fine. And the crowd's going to be like, wait, what's going on? Like, the live crowd's going to be like, wait, what's going on? We just saw him injure his eye. Or the opposite effect happened. All right, let's get into the episode where, as they say, it's uncut, uncensored, and unhinged, or whatever that expression is. They say it like 50 billion times a night. I'm sure I'll have it in there. All right, let's get into the episode. I think that's like the best rendition of that I've done. Yeah, this is like the third recording, kayfabe though. Episode starts off the streets with Sean Mooney, who used to be one of their like play-by-play guys, or like interviewers, I guess is a better way to say it. It was like him and what was it? I almost said Prince Albert. My bad. Lord Alfred? Question mark on that. But yeah, he's one of them. The one that's going to be throughout this whole episode of Monday Night Raw. He's on the streets saying that minutes earlier there was a mob scene of people out there. I couldn't find the actual number of attendance online anywhere. If you know the number, like put it in the comments below or like let me know. But I don't think anything that they say here was like for shootsies. I think it was just them hyping up things. It wasn't actually sold out. Or like this crazy mob of people. I think it did good. I think it had a couple thousand, but it's not like anywhere near what they're hyping it up to be. Anyway, he hypes up the show outside and just saying like, oh, this is cool, the first historic episode, you know, shit like that. And then Bobby Heenan tries to enter the arena. Mooney tells the Brain that he's been replaced this evening by Rob Bartlett, Bartlett? Yeah, Bartlett. Which, by the way, sidebar, he was known, Mr. Rob was, for being a radio comedian at the time. And honestly, tonight and subsequent episodes will not be the best of his work, I think. If I'm quoting my sources right, that I'm not fact-tracking. I heard a while ago that he wasn't, like, familiar with the WWF and their work. So maybe that's why he's not at his best. But it also could just be Vince, like, cutting him too. I don't know. Anyway, he's kind of rough at these episodes until they replace him back with the Brain. Anyways, back to the review. After Heenan has some banter, and they were shelling the later on matches of the evening, Mooney tells him that the show is sold out and no seats are available. The best kayfabe ever, because you can see there's clearly seats available later. And then, in my opinion, the most annoying yet iconic intros playing. You know, I already did the bit. But that one, God, I hate that one. It is the worst intro ever because all I can think of is, man, they're trying to be Saturday Night Live. And it shows throughout the show. It really shows. And it would be alright alone if that was all, but then when it cuts to the ring and you get the like siren going off the whole time they're talking, it just makes me want to just not tune in ever again. But as they get to the arena, Vince McMahon welcomes us to the Manhattan Center. Just a pause real quick. I know nowadays the faux pas of mentioning Vinnie Mac, but God, you can't mention wrestling, specifically WWE moments, without him being involved in like 75% of them, if not 90% of them, honestly, because he was literally all over the show most of the time. So we're just going to acknowledge he's a shitty person nowadays. If he does stuff that's funny, it's going to make me laugh, but I acknowledge I hate the human, love the writing. Okay? Okay. But he welcomes us to the Manhattan Center where him, Bartlett, and the Macho Man Randy Savage... Oh, wow, I had a cough there. Oh, that was terrible. I just ruined it. They're on commentary this evening. This is during the time that Vince McMahon thought Macho Man was too old to compete, which, for reference, most of the past like modern-day champions are either near his age or older, I'm pretty sure, so that's just kind of funny to think about. They're running down the card for this evening, and Bartlett ends up calling Yokozuna Yokozumba and makes a joke about like what he wears looks like a diaper. You can tell that as soon as he made that joke, as well as some other jokes for the evening, that McMahon completely no-sells it, and it feels like he's having a little bit of buyer's remorse with Bartlett. After they do a rundown of the card, we have the Birdman, Koko Ware, without Frankie. Rest in peace. I looked up where's Frankie nowadays, and Frankie has passed. So rest in peace, Frankie. And he's going against Yokozuna. To the best of my knowledge, they weren't in a feud at this time or even had one at this event. So this is one of the many thrown together matches of the evening. I understand how it would be so confusing if you started episode 1 and had like running feuds already, but it needs to like tie in more with already scripted WWF programming. But hey, I get it. You're starting something new. You want the audience just to tune in and be like, oh, these are cool fighters. That's interesting. And you're trying to like sell certain people to the network. So I get it. Oh, side note, speaking of Koko Ware and Frankie, there was a Jack Specific 3-pack with Koko, British Bulldog, and Jake Roberts that had all 3 of their gimmick animals with them. So like Frankie, Matilda, and I don't remember which was it. Damian? I don't remember which one, but it was like a generic snake that wasn't even colored. So if you know how to get a hold of one of those that's not $800, let a brother know. I used to love that pack. Anyways, the match is as throwaway as Bartlett's jokes were to Vince, because Vince just no-sells them throughout the night. At the beginning of the match, Yoko does like the traditional sumo wrestler like sign of respect for the ring. So shout out to the real life Yokozuna, like the person behind the character, for putting this much work into his character. Hats off to him. Just, we're talking through all these alarms. It just be what it be. He does like the sign thing for just respect of the ring, and then throws salt. Imagine being a fan, being like, oh, I'm so interested in Monday Night Raw, and then you're one of them that gets like doused down with salt. That would suck so much. During the show, they plug how it's Royal Rumble season because in 2 whole weeks, we're going to have the Royal Rumble 93. During this match, they show the replay of the end, which, by the way, the end is Yokozuna winning with a bonsai drop. But instead of yelling out bonsai, he yells out something else. I didn't catch it, so that's just interesting. During the replay, there's no branding or anything that says replay or anything. It's literally just showing Yokozuna sitting on him and then freeze frames on his face. They cut to commercial on that freeze frame, which I did not rate this, but pause before we get into the commercial. I'll rate this match, let's see, for historical context of being the first Monday Night Raw match. If I was a viewer just scrolling through the channels and I saw wrestling was on and I wasn't already a fan of wrestling and I watched this like 2-minute long match, I would give it like an average, like 3 stars. It wasn't terrible, but it wouldn't make me be like, I have to watch wrestling now. Except if I wanted to see the big man get squashed, then maybe. But yeah, 3-star match. After this, we get a Royal Rumble ad, which they end up keeping in. That was cool. Freaking plus stars for the whole show because of that Rumble ad. During like the end of the match, before we went into the commercial, there was a joke made from Bartlett about a headlock for hunger. I completely forgot that was the thing that they were doing at this time, which, spoiler alert, it will be mentioned later on in the show, but that's crazy. Alright, after all that, we come back to commentary, who immediately sends us to a pre-recorded video with Bobby the Brain Heenan talking about, quote-unquote, narcissistus. I fucked up my own bit. Narcissist. At the time, Mr. Perfect just left the Heenan family, so to counter that, Bobby decided to bring in a mysterious man in storyline, and his name would be Narcissus. As we learn later on, spoiler, it's Lex Luger that he brings in. I think this was Vince's way of being like, I own you, you're not Lex Luger, you're the Narcissus. I'd talk about the promo more in depth, but honestly, it was just, the whole time was just Bobby just hyping up how great Narcissist is. He says that Narcissist will be revealed at the Rumble. So just a cheap plug in the middle of the review. I meant to do it at the previous Rumble mention, but to keep things kind of running smoothly in our historical context, I might watch the Rumble of this year in 2 weeks' time and upload it on like a Saturday, Sunday, what have you, before one of these Raw reviews. But I don't know. Same principle may apply whenever I re-upload like last week's episode of Monday Night Raw and SmackDown, whenever we backtrack enough to this last week to get to Money in the Bank, and then go from Money in the Bank to, I think, Clash at the Castle, and so on and so on. When we keep on backtracking, I might hit those pay-per-views. As far as pay-per-views are concerned, though, I'll try to upload SummerSlam today. If not today, it'll be uploaded tomorrow or so on sometime this week, so keep out for that. Anyway, back to review, Dylan. Something that I want to mention, going back to the review, the promo curtain from this time period, it looks so cheap, and I love it for nostalgia's sake. It literally looks like something I could put up, and that's why I love it. 3.5 stars for this promo, for both historical context and the fact that Bobby Heenan is just a gem, honestly. He's the best part of any event. If I was average viewer at this time, and I was like interested in the Mr. Perfect storyline, this would make me kind of want to like convince, like if I was a child, it would make me want to convince my parents to buy it or whatever, just to see who this mystery opponent for Mr. Perfect was to counter him. After that promo, we get the Steiners. That's right, viewers. I also forgot they were in this episode until my memory was jogged in this match. Against local jobbers, I couldn't hear their names, honestly, because it's like if I'm commentary right now, you know, I'm my normal voice, whatever, the in-ring audio levels were lowered so much that it sounded like he was like talking like this the whole time. So it was really bad. Commentary kept on talking over due to them not being able to adjust the pitch accordingly. During this match, Doink the Clown, or I think as Bartlett calls him, Dork the Clown, is running through the crowd. And I swear, everybody hated Rob on commentary so much, they ignored him during a bit. He was trying to ask a genuine question, and everybody ignored him. Then Macho Man answered him and gave him kind of like a "fuck you, dude" type of answer. And then he said, "No, I'm just kidding." The Steiners, by the way, during this match, beat the shit out of the jobbers as if they owed them money. I know the Steiners are stiff. I never got to watch them except during the Big Papa era of Scott and a little bit of Rick during that time as he was retiring. But I never got to watch the Steiners fully. I always heard how stiff they were. And dear Lord, I love this. They beat the shit out of the jobbers. Or, genuine here. Some people are offended by the term jobbers, even though that's what they are. But, like, talent enhancement, I guess, is the way to say it. I don't know. I'm going to call them the talent enhancement from here on. So apologies for using the term jobbers for those who are actual wrestlers and don't like that terminology. Also, I just have to make a note here. What a maneuver said so many times by Vince McMahon. It seems like he just didn't care what the move was actually called, and sometimes he just said it just to like pop himself. The Steiners win this match after Scott hits jobber number 1 with a Steiner driver, and then they hit a super Steiner drop from the top rope for the win. 4 stars. Just because I don't want to get beaten up by those very strong men named the Steiners. 4.5 stars, in fact. I'm sorry. No, please don't beat me up. After the match, commentary tries to, I guess, like, move into the next segment or something. I don't even know what they're doing. But they get interrupted outside by one of those like outside bits, only this is supposed to be like, hey, this is happening live right now, even though it's pre-recorded. It's Bobby the Brain Heenan in a disguise. He says that he is Rob's aunt. I did not get the name on it. They did a lot of like, it's funny because it's the 70s, but racist because it's nowadays bits during this time and also later on during the show. Mooney's rolling with it. He's like genuinely thinking it's his Rob's aunt for a second until Bobby fixes his wig, and then Mooney reveals it, even though maybe his aunt like wears a wig just for fun. Mooney reveals that it's Bobby, and literally the only thing missing from this is like a womp womp sound effect. 3 stars for this and the earlier bit. For historical context, it's probably the highlight of Bobby Heenan's like funny work. It's actually funny if this is the first time I'm watching it, but this, because of Raw 15th anniversary, the disc set, this is like the 800th time I've watched that, so this is my fault. Yeah, you tell him. This is my fault for not being like, oh, great segment. Anyway, I wrote during this that maybe it's just the times changing, and if this was like the 90s, I would love this shit, but I really wanted to stop watching the review right here, to be honest. This is not an exciting show. I think I even said it here, I think this makes 2020 era of WWE look almost amazing. They plug that after the ad, there will be a Razor Ramon interview, and that's what we get. And the Razor's already in the ring after the ad. Also, some background for where Scott Hall / Razor was during this point in his career. He debuted about 5 months prior. He's already had a high-profile feud with Randy Savage at this point, but this became a feud when Razor won a #1 contenders match, and then went after the Hart family, including the previous week he took out Owen Hart. They'll show that later on, and boy howdy, I have something to say about that. Razor says that he's more than ready for the match, basically. And Vince comments on how long it took Brett to get to this point. Why does he think that he's going to win it that fast off the bat? And Razor says that basically he's a better fighter than Brett is, and that's why he'll do it sooner than Brett did. Vince asks why he jumped Owen, and they show it, in case you missed it, on Mania last Saturday. By the way, asterisk real quick. Mania, in case you don't know, was on Saturdays from 1993 to 96, not WrestleMania, but just a show named Mania. It was a recap show, which eventually gets replaced by Live Wire, which I'll talk about maybe in 96 if it's important. I'm going to give a brief history on it because I never want to mention this again, except when events happen. Todd Pattengill was the host of Mania for the time being. He was joined by Savage from 93 to 94 and Stephanie Wiand for a brief period in 95. In 96, WWF diva Sunny was a special guest host for Mania, and the title was changed to The Sunny Show for that episode. In September 96, Mania was cloned in the form of WWF Blastoff, which aired on Superstation WGN at 9 a.m. Eastern, an hour before Mania. I presume they meant this Mania, not WrestleMania. They were essentially the same show, hosted by Todd Pattengill also, and shows the same matches from WWF, Monday Night Raw, and Superstars of Wrestling. Only Blastoff was hosted in a production studio while Mania actually had a set. Mania was canceled in 96 and it's succeeded by another recap show, like I said. Pettengill also hosted Livewire until he left in late 97. Mania's television run lasted from January 9th to 1993, so literally the previous episode had to have been episode 1. It lasted from then through September 14th, 1996. I'm not going to review any of the Manias or any of the recap shows, what have you, because of them just being recap shows. But I figured that was an interesting little pinpoint to make about Mania, Livewire, whatever we have. Alright, going back to that review, Vince asked him why he jumped Owen on Mania. They showed the replay like I was saying, and boy, the camera angle is just so rough. It straight up looks like the whole time Owen was talking, Scott was behind the cameraman just like in a frog pose, waiting for his cue, and then he just literally jumps, like leapfrogs into shot and clotheslines him. I don't know how else to describe it. It's just obviously staged. Anyway, we go back to the ring. Razor pokes fun at Squash and Hitman's brother like a cockroach, and says there's nothing he can do about it, and he will lose the gold on Sunday. Vince says, like, oh, thank you for your time, wrapping it up, whatnot. And as he does that, Razor takes a toothpick out of his mouth and throws it at Vince, and it hits him. And you can tell, like, Vince gets so fucking pissed at this, because you can tell by his look on his face. He says, oh, really? So for the segment, just because it pissed Vince off and because it was a decent way to be like, hey, this is what's happening between Razor and Brett Sunday by the pay-per-view, I'm going to say easily 3.5, if not 4-star promo. I always love Scott Hall's promos. After that, commentary plugs the Headlock on Hunger charity event, and a Madison Square Garden card is what they call it, but an event that happened there. Somebody tried to say they're hearing from Totonka now about this, which don't get me started on this. Not trying to be the PC police during this event, because I know like the 90s was a different time and what have you, and things were more acceptable then than they are now on certain things. But the caricature of Totonka is so fucking offensive, I swear. I understand the man who played him was perfectly fine with it and didn't find it offensive, but morally, does that make it okay? I don't know. I'll let you be the person to decide that. Like I said, I'm not the PC police or anything, so I guess it's up for interpretation. In a dramatic character stereotype, he basically says, thank you for donating, and donate some more. Then we have Max Moon after that, not Conan, but the other guy, against HBK with the best rendition of Sexy Boy, honestly. It popped me when the network kept this, but it's the Sherry Martel version of Sexy Boy. Which, God, it's so much better than the version when Sean sings it. It sounds like they dubbed it over, though, still, so who knows, maybe he had the other version where it's like, Sean! You know what I mean? Anywho, this match was so refreshing to watch after all these squash matches. Wrestling is subjective, I understand that. But my interpretation of it is that the action in the ring and like what little story they're going to tell you throughout the match, or story they have told you through it, is what makes wrestling. And what story they're telling like through promos and what have you. While this didn't have any promos or have any like actual story, because I think, to the best of my knowledge, this was a thrown together match due to the fact that this was just building up Shawn Michaels being this dominant IC champion. It was refreshing to see a story in the middle of a match instead of it just being a squash. During this match, my only thought was like, man, imagine if this was Conan, though. Those guys would be tearing it up like cruiserweights nowadays do. 4 stars for this match. Shawn wins with the super kick leading into a teardrop suplex. Of course, later on, he'll actually have the super kick become the sweet chin music, and the teardrop suplex just gets lost to time. But for the time being, teardrop is his finisher. By the way, the saying I was trying to say earlier was uncut, uncensored, and uncooked. I don't know if I corrected that, but that's what it actually is. At one point, Vince is asked if Shawn will be in the Rumble by Rob, and Vince tells him, only time will tell, and he sounds pissed off that he even asked that. This match was the first Raw match that actually went through an ad break, so the more you know. If you ever have like trivia night and need to know the answer to that, you're welcome. Pay me royalties. About halfway through the match, the fans start looking up the ramp because like something's happening, and Doink is messing with the fans. How dare he be messing with the fans? Halfway through this match also, they pretend that Mike Tyson called in, when in reality it's Rob doing a very bad impersonation. Womp womp. Halfway through this match, Vince seems like he just wants to end the segment and he regrets even starting it. Like I said, this is the second match, and God, it's just so refreshing. Even though it was a good match, there was points where I was like, I swear I could skip this match and not even care. I'm still talking about the Shawn match, by the way. Sorry for giving the star ranking off the bat. But 4 stars, bonus points for Shawn with the IC title, and he looks in it at the end and gives it the keys. Also, side note, if you could find the Jax figure that had HBK, I think during this time with the IC title, wearing like cow print, black and white, with the matching vest, but it's like the like Stone Cold vest instead of this, because that's how Jax did all their vests. If you could find that version of Sean, let a boy know. Oh, also, it was like the Legends pack. Anyway, after he poses, they go to advertisement for WWF Mania, and they have the rest of the show, like, run down, too. Come back from the ad, we have a Royal Rumble report from Mean Gene, brought to you by Ico Pro. He talks about HBK versus Marty, and then HBK and Jannetty have pre-recorded videos where they both say that Sherry will be in their corner. After that, Mean Gene plugs the rest of the show with pre-recorded footage. So imagine something like the kickoff show nowadays, basically, but like an advertisement for the whole thing. Something to boo about this is they announced all the contestants, but I'm going to keep it a semi-spoiler, so no, I'm not running down the contestants for the 1993 Royal Rumble. This is also the first Royal Rumble where the winner goes to Mania for a main event title match, I do believe. Anyways, after that, we go back to the show where they show plans about how to buy tickets for next week's show. And Uncle Morty is outside and he wants to see his nephew, Rob. And dun dun dun, it's Bobby Heenan in disguise. And here's where they have all the like Jewish stereotypes come in. My bad. Earlier they just pretended he was in drag. They plug another show, I think next week's show, and then go to ad, which was cool but weird to see everything plugged kind of like all at once. It was kind of overwhelming, but whatever. After that, they come back and plug how to buy Raw. And if I say plug one more time, I swear to God. Then after that, they replaced WWF Superstars, which was a show that aired on Saturdays from 86 until 2001. This bit was where Kamala turns on Harvey Whippleman. That was nothing to do with this match that's coming up, however, because it's Damian Demento. That's right, he did have a match on the first Raw against the Undertaker. Just a little side note of all that. WWF Superstars has already been airing up to this point, but just like I said with like Mania or whatnot, I don't want to keep on going back in time and then have something else be the first and then keep on going back in time. Eventually we'll cover it and make it part of the format for the show, but that's in due time. That's not today. I appreciate the Undertaker at this time period because he would just no-sell the shit out of everything, and the crowd would eat it up. He even hits Old School, which popped me because it's technically like school at this point. I love the flying clothesline that he does off the ropes, but specifically this one because he hits the clothesline and then immediately gets up and does the one knee Undertaker taunt. That was fucking amazing. This match was a squash among squashes, under 5 minutes, but 4 stars because it was freaking crazy. Oh, by the way, Damian, shave the back of your head. After that match, we go to talk to Doink, where Doink's talking to Vince about making children cry. That's right, OSW fans, it is this promo. Doink teases him until Crush comes out and warns him not to play pranks on any other children or he's going to break all of his bones. Doink gets chased around the ring because I think he pranks Crush until Crush rolls into the ring for some reason and Doink just leaves. 3 stars, brudda. After that, we end the show on that note, and then we do a bit with Todd Pattengale allowing Brain into the arena after the show's already ended. Womp womp. 3 stars. Yeah, you tell him that was a bad show. So how did the show do overall? Is it remembered for being like one of the best Raws to ever exist? I mean, not necessarily. It's kind of the opposite way. In my opinion, this is one of the worst eras of professional wrestling. Like, it goes like 2020s wrestling just because that's more fresh than this, and I had to live through that, like the Thunderdome era. It goes that, this, New Gen. This, New Gen, PG era, Universe era. This is going to get me some heat. Attitude era, Ruthless Aggression era, then current era. like from least favorite to favorite. That's how it goes for me. Hulkamania era is like number 3 on this, by the way. I really hated the like 80s, 70s, 80s, and even like up to mid 90s worth of wrestling. It was kind of just overrated. But you know what? That's my opinion. Wrestling's subjective. Maybe that's your style of wrestling. I respect whatever you like. But for me, if I'm an average viewer and I tuned into this in 1993, when there's nothing to do except watch TV for like an hour and then say, wow, that show was good or that show's bad. To be honest, what's airing in 1993? Let me look that up real quick. During the 90s for TV shows, there was The X-Files, Frasier, Star Trek Deep Space Nine, Boy Meets World, The Nanny, Beavis and Butthead, The Animaniacs. Some of these didn't come on during this time, but I know some of these only could air during this time. I'm going to be honest with you. If there was like a commercial break for like Beavis and Butthead or like a commercial break for reruns of The Nanny, I might tune into Raw. But I'm not going to go out of my way to sit and watch this for an hour. I might have it on as like background noise though for an hour. For everybody else, it was met with positive praise overall, and I can see it honestly. Like I said, if this was the 90s, because I lived through the 90s, if this was the 90s, yeah, this could be a positive thing in the 90s. It's met with positive praise overall from the critics. They loved the aspect of anything can happen and made it more thrilling than what the other guys were promoting at the time. And the smaller packed venues made the atmosphere look way more bustling than it actually was. Like I was saying earlier, eventually the formula for one live episode with several pre-tapes that they were doing will catch up with them. And eventually the competition will also kind of like spoil the event for the show, what have you. But that's way later down in the future, like 97. Right now it's paying off a dividend to record quote-unquote live episodes in bulk. So thanks for watching. Yeah, like I said, I'm going to try to do this and a, what do you call it? Not this week, but last week's episode of Raw. I'm going to try to do those, and then I'm going to do this week's episode of Raw. So next week, hopefully, I'll see you for episode 2 of WWF Monday Night Raw. Let's see if they can keep the momentum going. Like I said, don't hate the show, or else I wouldn't be reviewing it. I just don't think it's that great right now. Who knows? Let's see when Dylan becomes a wrestling fan in 2003, so I'll see you in about 5 years, give or take. Anyway, thanks for watching. I'll see you all next week.